Hey guys, thanks for tuning in to another video on ForgottenWeapons.com. I'm Ian McCollum, and I'm here today at the British Royal Armouries taking a look at some of the particularly interesting firearms in their reference collection. And I figured this would be a good opportunity to show you through an Albanian ASh-78 AK. This is an AK pattern we don't see all that much in the United States. It's got some distinctive features, nothing hugely exotic about it, but good to expand your understanding of AK patterns in general. So, to start with a little bit of background, Albania, throughout much of the Cold War, was allied with China instead of Russia. There were some political differences between the Albanians and the Russians. They got along better with the Chinese, and so starting in 1960, the Albanians start receiving military aid and assistance from China. And this is in the form of Chinese Type 56 AK rifles, as well as SKSs, and the Chinese supply the technical aid for Albania to set up production of the SKS. In fact, I have a video on the Albanian SKS, which is one of the more non-standard versions of the SKS that's out there, and it's rather interesting. So SKS production continued into the early 1970s, but in 1974, Albania, specifically the Gromsh State Arsenal, starts to set up a production facility for essentially the Chinese Type 56 Kalashnikov. This would take a couple of years for them to set up, and in fact, in the middle of this progress, there was a political schism between Albania and China. So by the time they finished this and actually started making guns, they were really doing it on their own. And first production actually took place in 1978. Albania did, although they may have imported a few parts from China to begin with, but once the production line was up and running, they were largely making all of their own parts because they no longer had that assistance coming in from China. And so what we have here is essentially a copy of the Chinese Type 56 stamped AK, which includes some of the unique features of the Chinese AKs, like the underfolding bayonet, which the Albanians copied. Now in 1982, they would also add the ASH-82 pattern, which is essentially the same gun with an underfolding stock, but this fixed stock pattern is what you see most often. So let's go ahead and take a closer look, and I'll show you the specific features to look for if you're trying to identify an Albanian AK. Sorry for the interruption, just want to say that today's video is brought to you by Headstamp Publishing, with an extensive catalog of books on all sorts of interesting and esoteric small arms, everything from World War II small arms to Imperial Japanese swords to the earliest of revolvers and Cold War battle rifles. There is something at Headstamp for every firearms enthusiast. Check it out, links in the description text below. Let's start with receiver markings and then we'll go through features. There are essentially no receiver markings. All we have is a serial number on the trunnion here. We have a 6-digit serial number leading 0 and then a 2-digit suffix, which is the year of production. So this is a 1986 production gun. Like I said, nothing up on the front sight block, nothing there, nothing on the underside of the receiver, and nothing on the right side at all either. Our selector markings are A for automatic and 1 for semi-automatic. Now let's start at the front of the gun for features, and we have most distinctively this underfolding bayonet copied from the Chinese Type 56. In fact, the whole front sight hood is copied from the Type 96. We have the hooded, fully hooded front sight, which is distinctively Chinese. We have sort of an oval cutout here instead of just a square. The Albanian rifles do not have threaded muzzles. I don't think Albania really had any plans to be training with blank firing ammunition, and that was the primary purpose of a threaded muzzle, so they don't have any of that. These lugs out here are for locking the bayonet into place, like so. You get a little Chinese-style spike bayonet there. On the gas block, we have vent holes back here on the gas tube. Most other countries, when they went to, well, the AKM, put its gas block vent holes here, actually at the back of the gas block itself. This was an early milled AK feature in the Russian production, and the Chinese just copied this over onto their Type 56. The Type 56 stamped guns are really hybrids of the milled AK and the AKM, because the Chinese did not have the full Russian technical package or license to build the AKM. They kind of had to figure out their own stamped receiver, and so they did it a little bit differently than the Russians did. See, we have a sight that goes out to 800 meters, D, like with China, for the point blank range. Our front trunnion rivets here are offset like the Chinese. The Russian pattern guns will have the front two in line there. Already mentioned the selector settings. The receiver here does not have magazine well dimples. The early Chinese Type 56s did not either, and that's what the Albanians were copying here. China would later add those dimples in, but they weren't in the early production guns, and they didn't get into the Romanian guns. We also have a single rivet on either side of the trigger guard, again, copied from the Type 56. We have the stock angled a bit down, like the 56, which is also a feature taken from the original milled AKs. The Chinese typically, well, this is a Chinese style and shape of grip. The Chinese would typically checker the grips to give you some texture. The Albanians skipped on that. We do have a trapdoor in the butt plate for a cleaning kit, which is not in this gun, but that's where you would keep a little cleaning kit with some tools for things like sight adjustments. The receiver top cover is solid, not ribbed, made of a little bit heavier steel than the Russian pattern ribbed ones. If we go inside here, there is no rate reducing mechanism in the fire control group. Again, the Chinese didn't put one in, so neither did the Albanians. And we have a piston, bolt carrier, and bolt that are all chromed, so easier to clean with corrosive ammunition. The barrel is also chrome lined. The bolt carrier is marked with the serial number. They dropped the leading 0, but that is a matching serial number. And same with the bolt body there. Overall, Albania probably made the lowest quality factory AK of any of the Eastern Bloc nations making AKs. The Chinese Type 56 that they based it on is a pretty good gun, but the manufacturing quality, the fit and finish, the QC on the Albanian guns is not great. There's a lot of talk about AKs being cheap and crap and badly made, but in general, most of them actually, a lot of money went into the production tooling and a lot of care was taken in the assembly. Most AKs that were made for military purposes are actually pretty good guns. The Albanians, like, the design is good enough that the guns still run pretty much, but yeah, the fit and finish, the final quality is about the worst out there. As for production numbers, well, we really don't know. I've seen sources that suggest anywhere from a couple 100,000 to 3 million total produced. And by the way, production continued until 1997, which is a little bit unusual. Most countries ceased production of like their 7.62x39 variations at some point around the end of the Cold War when they didn't really need a ton of guns anymore. Albania just kept cranking these things out. But like I said, we really don't know exactly how many were made. So hopefully you guys enjoyed this look at a fairly unusual AK pattern. Big thanks to the British Royal Armouries for giving me access to this one to film. Thanks for watching.